Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. The story you're about to hear is one that may feel deeply personal to many, because at its heart, it's about change, rediscovery, and the quiet shifts that happen in a marriage when we least expect them. This is the story of Elena, a soft-spoken Russian woman living in the quiet suburbs of Virginia, and her husband Mark, a man who had always been reliable, gentle, but emotionally distant, until something changed. For years, their relationship moved like clockwork, steady, predictable, maybe even a little too familiar. Breakfast at 7. His coffee just black. Her tea with 2 sugars. The same goodbye kiss at the door, the same silence at the dinner table, and the same unspoken space between them when the lights went out. It wasn't a bad marriage, it just was. Until one evening, something in Mark shifted. And Elena, for the first time in years, felt seen. He touched her hand, not out of habit, but with a kind of awareness that startled her. His eyes lingered on hers a little longer, and when he said her name, it sounded fuller, warmer. It wasn't about grand gestures or passion out of a movie scene. It was in the way he helped her with the dishes, the way his hands brushed her hair back gently, the way he suddenly remembered small things, like her favorite scent, or the way she liked the windows open during spring. What caused this change? Was it something he had been holding back all these years? Or was it that Elena herself had begun to change, and Mark noticed? This is a story of 2 people who had almost become strangers in their own home, finding their way back to each other not through drama or crisis, but through small, meaningful choices. But just as Elena starts to believe that this shift might be permanent, something unexpected happens: a letter. One Mark hides the moment it arrives. A phone call he doesn't answer. A name Elena has never heard before. And suddenly, the warmth she's felt begins to mix with a quiet, gnawing doubt. Who is this version of her husband, and what has awakened this side of him? Is love enough to carry a marriage into a new chapter, or are there secrets that even love cannot survive? Before we dive into the full story, I'd love to know, have you ever felt someone you love change in ways you couldn't explain? Do you think people can truly start over in the same relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments, or vote in the poll pinned below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next part of this deeply emotional and romantic journey. Trust me, it only gets more interesting from here. Elena couldn't stop thinking about that moment, the way Mark had touched her shoulder the night before, slow and gentle, like he was feeling something for the first time. It wasn't just the touch. It was the way he looked at her afterward, like he was searching for something in her eyes, or maybe recognizing something he had forgotten. It stirred something inside her, a warmth, yes, but also confusion. For years, she had learned to live in the quiet rhythm of their life. Nothing had been broken, but nothing had really felt whole either. They had met 12 years ago in Moscow, at a coffee shop near the university where she worked. Mark had been visiting for a business project. He was different then, curious, full of questions, a little awkward in Russian, but charming in his effort. She remembered how easily they laughed in those early days. It hadn't taken long for things to move forward. A quick wedding, then the move to the US, where everything felt new and uncertain. At first, their love felt like something soft and safe. But over time, something unspoken grew between them. Mark worked long hours. Elena, though fluent in English, often felt like she was speaking a language no one really heard. They lived well, house, friends, photos on the wall, but a certain distance always remained. And now, just like that, it seemed to be melting. Mark was paying attention again. He noticed her perfume. He asked about the books she was reading. One morning, he made her favorite breakfast, perfectly boiled eggs, the way her mother used to do back home. It was all so gentle and unexpected. But that letter, the one he quickly tucked into his coat pocket when he thought she wasn't looking, it cast a shadow over everything. He said nothing about it. And Elena didn't ask. Yet. That night, as they sat side by side on the couch, watching a film they'd both seen before, Mark reached over and held her hand. No words. Just warmth. Her heart should have been at peace, but instead, it beat with a quiet worry. Was this closeness real? Or was it a curtain drawn over something he didn't want her to see? And as she leaned her head against his shoulder, wondering whether to ask about the letter, Mark's phone buzzed quietly on the table. A message flashed. One word. A name. The screen went dark before she could read it again. Elena didn't sleep much that night. She lay still beside Mark, his breath steady and deep, his arm resting loosely over her waist. Anyone looking in would have seen a picture of quiet intimacy. But inside her, questions were slowly unraveling. That name on the phone, short, unfamiliar, was enough to disturb the calm she had just started trusting again. She hadn't seen it clearly. Just a glimpse. But it was enough. The next morning, Mark was his usual self, maybe even more attentive. He brought her coffee in bed, kissed her temples softly, asked if she wanted to go out for dinner that night. A small Italian place, he said. The one they hadn't visited in years. It all sounded sweet. But for Elena, it was like a beautiful painting with a small crack in the corner, easy to ignore at first, but impossible to unsee once noticed. At the dinner table, their conversation flowed easily at first. Memories. Their early years in Moscow. The time Mark had tried to ski and ended up with a bruised hip and a bruised ego. They laughed. But then, Elena asked a simple question, one she'd been holding inside since the night before. Do you ever talk to anyone from back home? From before we met? Mark looked up, surprised. He took a sip of wine before answering. Not really. I mean, a few colleagues, maybe. Why? She shrugged, smiling faintly. Just wondering. You seemed thoughtful lately. He nodded, a little too slowly. It's nothing serious. Just work. Stress. But Elena knew his work stress voice. This wasn't it. Later that week, while cleaning the bedroom, she found the envelope tucked inside one of Mark's suit jackets. It wasn't hidden exactly, but it hadn't been left out either. The handwriting on it was neat, slanted. A woman's handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. It had already been opened. She didn't read it, not yet. She just held it, feeling the weight of something she couldn't name. Was it betrayal? Or just the fear of what she might find if she looked too closely? At the same time, Elena's friend Natasha, another Russian woman in town, started noticing the shift in Elena's mood. Over coffee, Natasha asked carefully, "Is everything all right between you two? You've seemed far away lately." Elena hesitated. She trusted Natasha, but part of her didn't want to say anything. Not until she was sure what she was dealing with. "I think he's changing," Elena finally said. "And I don't know why." Romantic tension. A letter unopened. A phone that buzzed just a little too often. The air between Elena and Mark grew heavy with unsaid things. What would you do if you were in Elena's shoes? Would you read the letter? Confront Mark? Or wait and see how things unfold? Tell us in the comments below. Your thoughts might just shape where this story goes next. Elena kept the letter in her drawer, still sealed, for 3 days. She would take it out at night when Mark was asleep, hold it in her hands like something fragile, something powerful. Every time she thought about opening it, her heart raced. She had always believed that trust was the thread holding their quiet life together. If she tore it now, would everything fall apart? Mark was more affectionate than ever. He cooked her favorite soup on Thursday night, held her hand during their walk through the park, even played the old Russian songs she liked while they washed dishes together. His eyes were warm, his smile soft, but Elena could see it now. Behind all of it, there was a quiet urgency. Like he was trying to fix something without telling her what had broken. On Saturday morning, while Mark was at the store, she finally opened the letter. Her fingers shook. Inside was a short message written in Russian. Just a few lines. A name she hadn't heard in years. A woman's name. Someone from Mark's time in Moscow. Not a love letter exactly, but there was familiarity in the words. Too much comfort, too much memory. The tone was subtle, but the meaning was loud. She wasn't sure if this woman was reaching out as a friend, or something else entirely. That night, she watched Mark closely. The way he spoke, how he avoided eye contact when she asked simple questions. Every little thing began to look different now. She even noticed how he checked his phone when he thought she wasn't watching, how he paused just a beat too long before answering casual questions. The romantic tension that had warmed her heart only days ago now felt like a strange fog, thick, uncertain. Elena didn't know what to believe. Could it be that this woman from the past was just an old friend? Or was Mark trying to relive something he had once lost? The mystery of his sudden tenderness no longer felt sweet, it felt calculated. As they sat in silence that night, with the television playing something neither of them was watching, Elena turned to him. She wanted to ask everything. But before she could say a word, Mark's phone buzzed again. He picked it up, stared at the screen, and slowly stood up, walking out of the room without a word. Viewers, what do you think Elena should do now? Should she follow him? Pretend she saw nothing? Or finally ask the question that's been burning inside her? Comment below and share your thoughts. We're almost at the moment where everything changes. Elena sat frozen on the sofa, the letter still in her lap, her eyes on the hallway where Mark had disappeared with his phone. Every sound in the house felt louder now, the faint ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even her own breath. She waited for him to come back, to say something, anything. But he didn't. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The silence turned cold. Elena stood slowly and walked toward the hallway. Mark wasn't in the kitchen. Not in the bedroom either. She stepped toward the back porch and saw him standing outside, just at the edge of the yard, phone still in his hand, shoulders tense. He wasn't speaking. Just listening. Whoever was on the other end was doing all the talking. She didn't go out. She just watched him through the window, her mind spinning with the pieces she still couldn't fit together. When he finally came inside, Mark looked startled to see her standing there. For a moment, he seemed like he might say something honest. But then, just as quickly, he slipped back into the version of himself she was starting to distrust. It was a work call, he said quickly. A client from Europe. Nothing important. She nodded slowly, saying nothing. But the weight in her chest grew heavier. The next day brought something unexpected. A package arrived, no name, no return address. Mark was out when it came. Elena brought it inside, her hands trembling. Inside was a small, velvet box. She opened it slowly. A necklace. Silver, delicate, and unmistakably the one she had pointed out during a trip to Prague years ago, a necklace Mark said was too expensive at the time. There was no note. Just the box. And suddenly, 1,000 new questions bloomed. Was this from Mark? Had he planned this to surprise her? Or was it from the woman who wrote the letter? A gesture meant to confuse, or confess. That night, when Mark returned, she placed the necklace on the table between them. He froze. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "It came today," she said. "No note. Just the necklace." Mark stared at it for a long time. Then, he said something she didn't expect. "I didn't send it. But I think I know who did." Elena's heart raced. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down, the guilt plain in his expression. "Someone I should have told you about a long time ago." Before he could continue, his phone buzzed again. This time, Elena stepped forward and picked it up before he could react. A new message on the screen. Just one sentence. "She deserves to know the truth. And I will tell her myself." Viewers, what do you think is going on? Who sent the necklace? What secret is Mark hiding, and who is the woman behind the messages? Drop your theories in the comments. Could Elena be facing a truth that will change everything she thought she knew about her marriage? Mark sat down slowly, his hands open like he was finally ready to stop hiding. Elena stood across from him, the necklace still in her hand, the message still fresh in her mind. The quiet between them was full of everything they hadn't said for years. Finally, he looked up. "Her name is Anya," he said. "We met years ago, before you and I even married. It wasn't serious, at least I thought it wasn't. But a few months ago, she reached out. She said she had something to tell me." Elena didn't move. Her heart pounded in her ears. "She has a son," Mark continued. "He's 11. Everything stopped. The room, the air, the past 10 years of her life, they all seemed to hold their breath. Elena looked at him, eyes wide, searching for something, truth, apology, anything that made sense. "Are you saying he's yours?" she asked, barely getting the words out. Mark nodded. "I didn't know. She never told me until now. She said she didn't want anything, but then she started writing, calling. The necklace, that was her way of saying she's not going away quietly." The pain in Elena's chest shifted. Not just betrayal, but something deeper, realizing that the man she had shared her life with had a whole other chapter she'd never even known existed. The recent warmth, the sudden affection, it all made sense now. He hadn't been rediscovering her. He had been trying to ease his own guilt. "You should have told me the moment she reached out," she said softly. "I was scared," Mark whispered. "Scared I'd lose you." Elena turned away, tears in her eyes, but not from weakness. It was clarity. A quiet strength rising. Then came the twist. She pulled open a drawer and handed him an envelope. "I got this 3 weeks ago," she said. "From a lawyer in Moscow. My aunt passed away. She left me property. A house. And I've been thinking about visiting. Alone." Mark stared at her, silent. "I don't know what this means for us," she continued, "but I need to find myself again. I need space that isn't filled with things you forgot to say." And with that, she turned toward the window, the necklace still in her hand. Viewers, what would you do if you were in Elena's place? Could you forgive? Or is it time to let go? Let us know in the comments, because sometimes, love is not just about staying. It's about choosing yourself. Mark didn't follow Elena to the window. He stayed where he was, letting the weight of her words settle in the silence. For the first time in years, there were no distractions, no gentle excuses, no forced smiles. Just truth. Raw, unexpected, and overdue. In the days that followed, they moved carefully around each other. Not cold, but distant. Elena didn't ask more about the boy, and Mark didn't push her to stay. Their home became quieter, like it was already preparing for absence. She spent time packing, not just clothes, but journals, old photos, little things she hadn't looked at in years. Each item seemed to whisper a different version of her life, who she was before the move to America, who she became beside Mark, and who she might become next. Mark helped where he could. He didn't beg, didn't plead. But one morning, he placed a small envelope on her nightstand. Inside was a photo of a young boy with dark blonde hair and curious eyes. A quiet message: he exists. And he deserves to be known. When you're ready. Elena didn't say anything right away. She just stared at the photo, unsure whether the emotion in her chest was grief, empathy, or something else entirely. The day she left, Mark drove her to the airport. The ride was filled with small talk, weather, travel time, her aunt's village. But just before she stepped out of the car, he reached for her hand. "No matter what happens next," he said, "you deserve more than I gave you." She nodded. "We both do." In Moscow, Elena found herself waking up to unfamiliar sounds, birds she hadn't heard in years, the quiet rustle of birch trees outside the old house. There was peace in it. Not joy, not yet, but peace. She began journaling again, walking through old neighborhoods, reconnecting with pieces of herself she had long buried. Weeks passed. One evening, she found herself holding the necklace again, this time without pain. She wasn't sure what the future held, whether her path would cross with Mark's again, whether she would ever meet the boy in the photograph. But she no longer feared the unknown. Sometimes, love changes shape. Sometimes, it fades. And sometimes, it teaches you to return to yourself. Viewers, how did this story make you feel? Did Elena make the right choice? Would you want to see what happens next in her journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let us know if you'd love a sequel.